Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Lineup with Dave Prodan. I'm Dave Prodan, and this is episode 20. So COVID-19 continues to disrupt lives, strain economies, cultures, and families, and kill people. And as I said last week, until we're through this, we're always going to run through the following in the upfront. The CDC's identified symptoms for COVID-19 include runny nose, sore throat, fever, cough, and shortness of breath. If you are not feeling well, call your doctor. The World Health Organization's behavioral recommendations that everyone should follow. Wash your hands, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. If you have to cough or sneeze, do so into your elbow. Social distancing, avoid groups of 10 or more people, and stay away from everyone as much as you can. If you're not feeling well, get checked out as soon as possible, and if you can work from home, do it. Okay. Last week, the WSL launched both the Vault and Rewind on WorldSurfLeague.com, and the response has been awesome. These shows continue this week with yesterday's release of the 2002 Boost Mobile Pro presented by Billabong for the Vault, where the best conditions Lower Trestles has ever had for a contest were paired with some absolutely classic performances. And this week's Rewind will play the 2014 Hurley and Swatch Pro at Trestles, where the new guard of Jordy Smith, John Florence, and Gabriel Medina shifted the paradigm on the men's side, and the first ever women's event at Trestles showcased just how gnarly the world's best surfers could be. Not to mention, this week's lineup guest makes a couple of appearances as well. Both shows are playing on WorldSurfLeague.com. Do not miss them. And that means it's Trestles week at the WSL. Spring is hit on the West Coast. Swells are starting to percolate out of the Southern Hemisphere, but stay home, everyone. We're still in quarantine. And the venue, long considered one of the most high-performance waves on the planet, needs to be celebrated. Maybe if we celebrate it enough, we can get a CT event back on the schedule. This week's episode of The Lineup at Low Tide centers around the culture and competition intrinsic to Lower Trestles, and now features new segments like the Rearview and the Pandemic Survival Kit to go along with the lightning round, as well as our usual long-form conversation. For our Rearview segment, we were watching video while we recorded. If you'd like to watch along with us, and I highly recommend you do, you can do that on WorldSurfLeague.com. It will also be in the lineup playlist on the WSL YouTube channel. If you do stick to the audio-only podcast, just know there might be a few times where we talk about something you can't see. Our guest today is someone who is San Clemente royalty and comes from a trio of brothers that took the torch for the beachside burb in the late '80s and continue to hold it to this day. He developed into one of the finest North American prospects of his generation and is an absolute hammer out at Lower Trestles. He was a CT rookie in the fated season of 2010, where the ASP reduced the men's field from 48 to 36 mid-year, and he went down to Andy Irons in Tahiti during AI's last run. Despite falling off tour, he continued to make an impact at the championship tour level as a wildcard, as well as outside the jersey as a raw, power-based, hard-charging aerial monster. Recently retired from competition, he now exists as a world-class free surfer, artist, and connoisseur of all surf coredom. Please enjoy the lineup's low tide conversation with Tanner Gudauskas.
The good old clap, take one.
That's right.
How many of you knew what you wanted to be when you were 7 years old? I did. I wanted to be a world champion.
Hey, is there honesty involved in this podcast? Can we be honest?
You can shut your fucking lips.
And then I'll just say, put them up, what? Let's go.
He's like, you look too pretty on the wave. Get ugly.
We can talk about DMT if you want.
I thought you were boxing.
Okay, Tanner Gudauskas joining us for the Lineup podcast for another Low Tide edition, which is what we're calling these during the COVID-19 pandemic. It also gives us space to bring you back for a full lineup in the future, so there's a little bit of difference. But both this podcast and you, as a human being, are being supported by Hydro Flask today. So fortunately for me, I have my afternoon tea in my 12-ounce here. What are you running on your side?
I've been running bubble water, but this is my go-to. This starts as coffee. So this morning I woke up, it was coffee. Now it's bubble water. And then in a couple hours here, I'm going to put the lid on it. It's convertible now, but we're going to close it up with a nice beer. And that's kind of how my days have been going.
That is one Hydro Flask to rule them all.
Yes.
Well, that's excellent. How are you doing today?
Oh, everything's good. Yeah, everything's been, the days have been pretty mellow. Not really too much going on, but They've been sunny. I'm stoked the rain stopped. So all in all, yeah, it's not bad.
Did you surf yet? Are you going to surf? Are you surfing during the quarantine time?
No, I haven't. I don't know. I don't really. Either way, like if you're going to surf, it's all good. And if you're not, but for me, I think the personal decision is just, there's always going to be another day to surf. And it's like, if I can just do some form of helping out, whatever, not spreading it or not getting it and spreading it, then I think for me that I'll just take a breather. I've got plenty of yard work to do, so I stay busy.
That's good. I guess it's helped. It's been like up in Ventura County, it's been like really nasty onshore spring conditions. So it's like cold and not that good. So it's not super seductive to get out there.
Totally. I mean, it was funny because when it first started happening, Lowers was still good. So a lot of guys were surfing it. But I think now like all the beaches are closed down and they're closing down. So I think it's kind of trending to maybe drying out those full suits a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so because this is a low tide edition, we're going to try to rally around a singular topic, and you already kind of teed us up. So the topic right now is going to be Lower Trestles, or as I call it, the House of Jealous Performers. If Lower Trestles wasn't a globally recognized spot, if it didn't have a name, if you were just a local at a spot that was unknown and unnamed, how would you describe the wave at Lowers to another surfer?
Well, I've had Lowers described to me as probably, Nathan Fletcher said it was the most egotistical wave in the world, because as your ego, you can do whatever you'd like to do on the wave. So like when you take off, no matter what the wave's doing, you can basically form in what you want to do on that wave. So if I was to describe it to somebody, I'd say it's the easiest wave to surf in the world, both directions.
That's a good description. The most egotistical wave in the world, from Nate Fletcher himself.
Well, because if you think about it, it's could be taken both ways because there's so many egos in the lineup out there, but more in this personal sense of your ego trying to do your best maneuvers. And that's always why I liked having the contest out there, because in terms of a performer and a high performance surfer, you have to show, it's like as close to a wave pool as you had before wave pools, because you literally could probably surf a real similar wave, 3 or 4 times in a heat.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide, like you kind of have to lay it all out on the line when you're competing there.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first time surfing it? Can you tell us about that experience?
I don't specifically have a crazy memory. I know that our dad used to take the 3 of us down to middles, and so I think we got pretty heavily into it around 10 to 12. And I don't think we were allowed to surf Lowers specifically at that time. Kind of a different, in San Clemente in general was a bit of a different time than it is now. I would say growing up there was really cool because the crew really held it down. A lot of those guys back in the day, like Chris Ward, the Beshens, the Fletchers, Archie, Dino, those guys literally were still at the top of the pecking order. John Robertson, Nate Yeomans, Kenny Caldwell. I mean, the list, it was so strong. And in that time, it wasn't like Groms could just paddle out and you would get waves. It's not, you would just get burnt, really. So we took a little while to get into it. And then, of course, once you taste the forbidden fruit, you're like, here comes every summer day for the next bit of my life. So, yeah.
I remember that. I remember watching the Archie film that's so good. It's the Bill Ballard film, and all the guys that were talking about it in that era, which is I guess it's late 80s, early 90s. You got Potts and the Dino and Snips and Chris Morrow and that. And they're we'd all meet up at T Street and surf T Street in the morning, and then we'd surf Lowers in the afternoon. And I was always why wouldn't you surf Lowers in the morning? But I guess it was just one of those things where it's they were training and Lowers was hey, Lowers is still pretty good even if the wind's on it. And I always thought that was kind of funny because I'm man, I'd be out there all the time if I could.
I would say that probably you almost see that now at Lowers. All the kids will hit it at the same time. I don't know what it is, but you'll be out there and then 20 of the most gnarly up and coming kids Kid Matson, Dean Matson, Cole Hauschman, the list literally goes on. They'll come down at the same hour and surf it. And I just laugh. I'm dude, that's, you're surfing, you're making a crowd to surf against. But I think probably it was back then, I know those guys were literally pushing the level, Martin Potter and Archie at that time. And I think that's like the Wave Warriors era. And like, I think those guys were just wanting to surf with each other and didn't really give a rip if the conditions were better in the morning. I mean, probably they weren't even waking up too early to get onto it at that time.
Probably not. It's funny. I moved up to Ventura 10 years ago, and every now and then I go back down there and I'll go surf. And I don't mind doing the walk. Like if I have like a morning, I'm like, yeah, dude, it's like 20 minutes from the parking lot, and I think about things and I go have a nice surf and I walk 20 minutes back. And then this last year when I was doing it a few times, it's just the herd of electric bikes that are like blasting by me. I'm like it's not like dozens, it's maybe hundreds some days where I'm just like, I'm like a dinosaur just trudging along here on the path.
It's intimidating. Because 2 years ago I moved down to Oceanside. So for me, lowers, I still surf it a fair amount, but not nearly as much as I was surfing it when I lived in town. And the way I get down there is like if I can't find a friend to drop me off, then I'll walk it. So I've totally felt that, and I can't hate. I've ridden electrical bikes twice, 3 times maybe, and it's a heck of a good time. Like you can't wipe the smile off your face, but just when they come so close to you and you're on the path, you got your board, it's like a sail. There's like that weird, it's almost like a low grade train passing you. You know, though?
It's so weird. Like I'm same thing. Like I don't hate. Like I totally get it. It'd be such a time saver. You could have your like headphones in. You can listen to music. You can do phone calls. You don't have like your wetsuit, like getting your clothes all screwed up on your walk. Like you can have it all packed away. I'm really jealous, but yeah, I don't have one, so I do the walk.
No, I mean like guys that have like margaritas in their hands. They're like leaving the beach, like had a great surf. Like here's my like pre-mixed margarita for the ride up. Like it's so easy for them.
Who were some of the surfers that you looked up to out at Lowers as a Grom, and what do you think it was about their styles that particularly worked out at that wave?
That's a really good question. I'd say for me, I always joke that I've only surfed the Lowers left. I surf the right more now, but so growing up, like specifically Cordell Miller was there every single day, and he like always linked it so far into the bottom to the top, and really a nice guy. And I'm trying to think, I mean, Nate Yeomans was huge for me. John Robertson was huge for me. Like that was like the first time I think I remember he was always really cool to me, and his style, like, you know, basically if you look at all those Lost videos that came out, that was like in the backyard. So it was Chris Ward was surfing phenomenal, and you'd see him every time you're at Lower. So it's kind of hard to not be influenced by those guys, their style and their approach. But specifically, like, I mean, I do have to say John Robertson was huge for sure. Cordell, Jeff Lukasic has always been a big influence for me because I feel like for me, I surf the left in a sense of just trying to get the moves to fit the wave, and he'll bypass a lot of the wave to just blast a big air. So it's fun to watch that. But there's a ton of guys. I mean, that's the cool thing about it is there's something for everybody out there.
Well, it's like you said, the most egotistical wave, because it does make you feel like you surf your best. Like you're like, oh, wow, I know where to do my bottom turn. I know where the air section is. I know where to do a top turn and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this week on worldsurfleague.com, we're playing the 2002 Boost Mobile Pro at Trestles for the Monday Vault. And I think in 2002, you would have been 13. Is that right?
Probably was. I'm trying to think. Hold on just a sec here.
What are we looking at? Props.
I think I got it. This is the 2002. Yep. CT02 September. The best of Lowers here.
The best of Lowers. Look at that. Did you go down to the event that year?
Oh, guaranteed. Yes, absolutely. I think this is the year Kelly and is this the year Luke won? Kelly and Luke had the
beat
semifinal
Mick Campbell
together?
in the final. Yeah. But it was also that year that Kelly, like, remember they had like 2 different expression sessions. They had like the air show where like Kersey won because Kersey just turns up every 10 years and wins like a new round of air shows. And then they had like the Boost Mobile expression session, and Kelly had like the best wave of the year where he did like 4 airs on one wave and everyone lost their minds.
Yeah, like it's so revolutionary right there. Like, what? No way.
That's right. And it's a time capsule. But yeah, sometimes at Trestles though, that year had like a really good hurricane surf. It was like a few feet overhead, but sometimes you don't want it that big there, like on those big hurricanes, because it doesn't hit the reef quite right. Like, what's the ideal size, like from your opinion, for Trestles?
Yeah, for sure. I think if it just depends who you're talking to. I mean, like you could even break down the lefts versus the rights. Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get nitty gritty, because a little bit more west, the left kind of hooks at itself. And then smaller, I've always liked smaller for sure, like around head high. Definitely once it gets double overhead, it's more of like a snowboarding experience. The wave face is real slopey and it's kind of hard to link moves together. I feel like that's when Kelly really stands out, is when it gets big, because he's able to hold such long lines. And I mean, from a perspective of always watching guys surfing it, Kelly in those contests obviously was winning all the time. He just looked so good on the wave. Mick Fanning also looked really good. Mick Fanning was able to kind of like hold those really long lines, and then once it would bowl up, then he would get real snappy.
Yeah, the timing, it's interesting watching that, and like even comparing guys like Guillaume Hurdy, who made the semis, and like Mick Campbell, and like on that big day when it got a little bit unruly, like Guillaume is still ripping, but his timing was a little off, and so it can make you look like you're really out of sorts, whereas like Mick Campbell was just, his timing was so much better, so it just looked like two different surfers. Yeah,
and too, like when it's that size, it's you're kind of forced to surf the right a lot more. The left is good. It's harder to find the good ones. So on your backhand, because both those guys, Gil Hermy and Mick, have really good backsides, but it's harder to go turn to turn. Now, but if that's smaller, it's actually way easier to just hit it a whole bunch of times.
As far as your amateur career was concerned, you made the 2006 Open Men's Final with Casey Brown, Keikoa Casimiro, Granger Larson, Clay Marzo.
What?
Was that like, yeah, deep cuts. That's what we're here for. Was that, and you were the lone Californian in that final. Was that kind of the high water competitive mark for you at Trestles before your professional career?
Yes and no. I would say that when the QSs came around, I remember doing well in those. I remember that there was the prime. I think I did a fifth, a third, and a second, the back-to-back years. And each year it felt like it was getting closer. There's the final with Miguel Pupo when he got the golden spike. And so that was really fun. The Open Men's, I just remember being with Mason Ho and both of us laughing because I don't think either of us got a wave in that final. Because back then it was like 15 minutes, 6 guys in the water or whatever. So you literally could just have
10 waves, a
bad stroke of luck, and then all of a sudden you're 6th.
That's right. And so then that year that you finished second to Miguel, was that the year that you qualified? Was that 2009?
I think
that's a huge result.
I think it was.
Yeah. And because your rookie year was 2010, which was the year that the then ASP really reacted poorly to a Rebel Tour threat prior to that and decided, okay, we're going to give no one any warning. We're going to drop the number from the top 35 to the top 34 halfway through the year. And you got screwed. Like, you got screwed on your rookie year. We can say that.
Well, the only thing I think looking back on that I feel like I really wish I had gotten was to surf at Lowers. That was the first event that I missed the cut on. But really though, like the time on tour was just, it was a really cool experience. Like that was my takeaway, was that you learn a lot by being at those events. And then, of course I spent like the next however many years trying to get back on. So I really still had the passion to compete. And that was just a wild time. I think there was a lot of change. And I think a lot of good has come from the change. Ultimately, whether or not like that call to pull the guys off at 6 months or a full year, it all kind of washes out.
It does kind of wash out. I think having been there, like in those discussions, like I think we were rushed in a lot of ways because we were worried and we were trying to do the mid-year rotation too. But I remember when they decided to do the field reduction, they kind of announced it at the end of 2009, where they could have just said, look, starting in 2011, we're going to do a field reduction, as opposed to like halfway through the year, because you surfed really, really well in those events. Like, I know you didn't get the results you wanted, but on the Gold Coast, you had a close heat in round 1 and round 2, like very close. You kept drawing Fred Patacia like every event, but they're all really close, and you'd lose with like 15 points. You had one of those, what I call like those Cansdale years, where it's like every other heat in the round you would have won, but just because you drew some guy that just had like half a point more, it was a tough one. And you got to compete at the Gold Coast, Bells Beach, Santa Catarina, Jeffreys Bay, and Tahiti. You got equal 17ths in Brazil and J-Bay. Did any of those other events kind of stand out in terms of learning experience for you on that rookie season?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I do feel like, even kind of reflecting on what you were saying, I was oddly validated. I think when you come on to it as a rookie, you're really self-conscious of everything. You're in the, the boardroom or whatever it's called, getting ready, and people are looking at you. And back then too, I feel like it was kind of a different time for rookies. It wasn't looked at as so much as like, hey, this is exciting. It was looked at like, hey, you got to prove yourself here against us. So I definitely remember, gosh, let me think about this here. I had a heat with B Durbridge that was so rad at Winky Pop. And that was, I know we both had 8s, and like I came in, I lost that heat, but I felt like, it kind of like you said, like, oh man, I'm getting good scores. Like I don't really have much to be afraid of here, in this realm. And it didn't really work out. But the other one I was going to say is Chopu. I knew I needed a result there. I needed to make the 3rd round or something. Yeah. And that year, the event went to the very last day of the waiting period, but the first round surfed the very first day. So we had however many days that is, 10 days in Tahiti with no waves. Yeah, and the draw came out, and I literally had Andy Irons. And so I'm like, oh, dude, you got to be kidding me. Like, what do you mean the odds of me needing 1 heat and I'm just drawing the greatest of all time AI? And so I just had to marinate for 10 days on that thought, which was actually really cool. I think about that trip. To me, I had a lot of growth of like, it was almost like this soft thing where I was like, okay, like what happens if I get it? That would be amazing. What happens if I don't get it? Am I okay with that? Like all that kind of stuff before I'd even surfed the heat. And of course, Andy got the better of me there, but we had really cool words after it, and he pumped me up. And like Andy, like he's such a good dude. Like when the jerseys are on, it was like psycho. He paddled me straight up around the reef, and then, and it was iconic. But then once we got into the boat, and we just had the most killer wrap out, and I really actually still remember that to this day, of just like how genuine he was. So like an experience like that, almost in the long run, it makes you feel like you really were a winner there, because it's like, obviously I didn't continue on the tour, but all the experiences of those heats with those guys. I think I surfed against Kelly in Brazil. I did surf against Kelly in Brazil, and I don't know. It's fun, man. When I look back on it, I really don't want people associating me with like, I'm bummed on the way it went down or whatever, because dude, I got nothing but, good memories on the whole kit and caboodle.
Of course. I remember that does jog my memory too, of how many lay days we had, and it was so small. And when it's small there, like all the civilians, like some of the staff are like, I'll go surf Chopes. It's like 3 feet. And I remember the night before the contest, like the swell kind of came up a little bit. Like it started, like there were kind of sets. It was like head high, a little bit overhead. And the judges and myself, we were out there kind of alone. And then this big boat pulled up, and everyone started going out. Like Hobgoods came out, and like, everyone that was in the event came out, and Kelly came out, and we're like, oh, this is awesome. So we kind of moved down the reef just to watch. And I remember Andy came out, and everyone at that level so sharp and so good, especially the guys at the top. It's like there's just not a lot of daylight between them. It's like at a wave like that. It's so fun to watch, because you're like, wow, look at where they're taking off, and like look at how they're drawing their line to generate speed or to shave speed off. And like Kelly's out there, like, one of the best of all time. And like Andy was out there, and he just was another level, even when it was small chopes, above everybody. Like it was just really impressive to watch, like where he was taking off on the reef, like how late he was dropping in, like his positioning. He was just so comfortable out there. It was really cool. And he ended up winning that event. That was his last CT win.
It was crazy, because in that event, so he beat me there, went on round 3, round 4, and then beat Patrick in the quarters. And that was the whole, Patrick did the flip, I think against Corey Davidson.
Chris Davidson.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. But it was that year. It was just so small, and he needed the score at the end. And everyone's like, there's no barrels. And he did the rodeo flip and he stuck it. And everyone's like, oh, good. That's awesome. Good job.
Dude, like I was sitting next to Nick Carroll, who was board caddying for Davo, and like he was just beside himself. The Pat had done a flip. And he was claiming they weren't going to give him the score, and I was like, "Dude, if they don't, if the score doesn't get thrown down,
they can't score that at Chopes.
You and I are going to brawl mode if that's not happening."
That's amazing. Today's episode of The Lineup is proudly brought to you by Hydro Flask. It goes without saying that these are strange and surreal times, but as surfers, we're designed to make the most out of any situation. While the earth is forcing us to take a pause, there is an opportunity to use this time to reset certain parts of our lives, whether it be organizing a healthier routine or cutting down on our daily use of disposable plastics, or both. Hydro Flask has dozens of options for us to adopt while sheltering in place. Whether it's the 64-ounce growler with hot water for the post-surf rinse, or the 12-ounce coffee mug for the early day routine, or the 10-ounce tumbler for an adult beverage and an evening stroll. They have dozens of options for whatever your lifestyle is now and or whatever you're going to have on the other side of this. Head over to hydroflask.com now and check out their selection of double-wall, vacuum-insulated stainless steel water bottles backed by a lifetime warranty. Okay, now back to the show. Well, so 2010 happens. You spend a couple more years trying to crack back on. It's a weird time in surfing. There's, as you said, there's so much change happening. But then 2014 at the Hurley Pro at Trestles, you get another crack at it. You get the wildcard event. How did you get the wildcard for that event?
That was when Hurley was doing the local trials. So I got that. I think Mitch Cruz got it a couple times. Ian Crane got it a couple times. And my brother Pat got it a couple times.
Yeah, the local trials thing, it's one of those things that I think we should be standardizing at every CT event. Like, we don't go to really any venue where there's not like a world-class community of surfers there, especially at that venue. And if you have that one spot in the event, I know that traditionally the event sponsors had the wild card and they've given them to sort of like young guys coming up or part of these sort of contract deals, et cetera. But that was a really cool thing that Hurley did, where it was like, no, there's like more than enough talent in the San Clemente community. Like we want to see like locals get into the event.
Yeah, for sure. I think you could argue that by virtue of the WSL events being at these locations for as long as they have, they've basically created, ponds of talent in those regions. Like Chopu now is literally held down by the locals on the biggest, gnarliest days. And, you go around the world and it's just exactly like that. I think it's a great way to connect the local community. Coming from my perspective of getting that, it was definitely, for me, like when I look back on competing, it was definitely up there as like the top moment. So it can make a big difference to people.
I think you're right, because it's one of those things where the little kids growing up, they go to the coffee shop, the week before, and they stand in line next to someone who's taking on Kelly Slater. Like that's such a big deal. And it doesn't matter if it's San Clemente or Coolangatta or Torquay or anywhere like Rio, like Chopu, like it's a big deal just to see people that are in their community get to surf against the world's best.
Yeah, no, it is. It truly is.
Well, and now we're going to watch your round one heat together for the first ever segment of the Rearview.
Well, let's get into it. Let me pull up my second computer here.
All right, so here we are, 2014 Hurley Pro at Trestles, round one. Get to open up with some Chippa Wilson ad. It's pretty cool. Do you know Chip very well, Tanner?
Actually, I know him pretty well. Like, we don't catch up on the phone, but every time we see each other, dude, the guy's such a good dude.
He seems like such a good guy. Who we got stumbling up the rocks here?
That's the perfect way to start this clip right here. How many times have we done that?
World's best surfer just stumbling around. That looks like Rayoni Montero.
Oh, it is. Oh my gosh.
Look at Matt Wilkinson.
Dude, why are we with our shirts off? This is concerning for everybody.
Yeah.
That's a rugged call. But yeah, so there we go. Bam. Matt Wilkinson's 22nd, Kelly's second.
So how do you approach like a heat again? Like, so you're a wild card, you're in it. What are you out to prove? Like, and how do you approach like round one against someone like Kelly and Matt?
Well, this is a really interesting thing because Wilkinson, is this, I'm trying to think, I'm just jogging through memory here. This isn't the year that Wilco was in the title race at this moment?
No, this is before he went on his rampage, but like we knew he had really deadly weapons, right? Like you'd seen him, like we knew he was a bit of a freak. Like he had all.
Oh yeah, I mean the first time. So I've known Matt for a long time. The first time I saw him surfing was when we were 16 at the ISA Worlds in Tahiti, and he won that event. And I had never, to that point, I had never known of Matt Wilkinson, and he surfed freakishly good for his age. He had way more style and flow and form. And so Wilco's like, I mean, what he's done even outside of the jersey with rodeos, airs, laybacks, he was a freakishly good dude. So
good.
Yeah, of course, like you're saying, like this heat right here with Wilco and Slater, I would be looking at that like a huge heat.
Well, and Kelly, he's 3 years from his 2011 world title. He finished runner-up in 2012 to Joel, finished runner-up again in 2013 to Mick. So he's still very much a contender in everyone's mind.
I mean, you could even say Kelly's still a contender as he's going to step.
Well, I was going to ask if you still think he is in 2020.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's so like nowadays. I would say in the performance level, guys like Italo and Philippe and Gabby, they're setting new levels of performance surfing. But Kelly's wave knowledge, his ability to just have good form on his board, and his barrel riding is still at the top level.
It's freakish. So this opening set with no priority, like, are you a guy that's like, I have to get the first wave, or like, I'm just going to hang back and wait? Like, how do you kind of approach this? What was your head like right now?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, like every day is different out there, but it looks like Kelly, Kelly, that's the thing that's what's so fun about surfing against Kelly out here. He has literally more local knowledge than I do. So I take him as he does, dude. Like, he's surfed it more than I have, more than likely. And he surfs it just like ruthlessly. You know, I would say the way I always looked at it at lowers is that you'll probably get about like 15 7.5s to come through, but there's always like 2 or 3 8.5s and 9s in a specific heat. And you just kind of got to watch it for a long time and say like, which one of these waves looks like it is easier to surf.
Right. And so that opening wave for you, like, what, are you just kind of getting your feet in the wax? Like at some point you're like, this isn't going to be a score, but I'm just going to kind of put it on a rail a little bit and just kind of push the board and get comfortable.
Yeah.
Is that how you approach that?
I've always, if I put a jersey on, I'm always the guy that likes to catch a wave early in the heat, because I've never really been good at sitting and being patient.
There's a Kelly replay here.
Yes, dude, this is so cool. We're going to like pseudo commentate this thing.
Well, no, like half commentate, right? Oh my God.
Like, how good was Kelly on those?
Because he left Quicksilver. Remember, he had he'd said goodbye to Quicksilver at Margaret River that year, but he hadn't left Channel Islands yet. Because remember, he ended up splitting from them and buying Firewire. And you and him you still ride for Channel Islands. What was that kind of like when he decided to leave? Was it weird for you? Did you not care? Like, what was that like?
Well, it was a big part of me wanting to be at Channel Islands. I'd say that for sure. Like, I think growing up, that momentum generation, a lot of the guys were on Channel Islands surfboards. So being from California and it's here, I think it was always looked at in my eyes as the most prestigious brand. I still see it the same way. I respect Kelly for what he did. It's all good, but I still just dream about these type of clips that we're watching. Kelly on these boards, like this might be the year, the Vulcan Pro, where he rode that epoxy forefin. You remember that? Those backside turns were out of control.
Oh, for sure. Kelly. Here's another right. Oh.
Yeah, his flow, his form, he's able to get so much power and drive. And it's kind of exactly like we were talking about with Mick. Then he'll like swoop some crazy long line. Yeah. And then he'll just rip it, like poke it.
Yeah, and this wasn't even like, this is kind of a mid-sized one. Like he just kind of had a nice line, and he's 42 here. He's just,
I'm sorry.
He's 42 got so many weapons, right? Like, what's that?
He just fully blue tail to an air reverse at the end of that wave.
Yeah, just ho-hum. Like he's got all these weapons. That looks like it's like a EPS board with carbon strips, maybe.
I think it is.
What are your thoughts on EPS?
Yeah, I like it. EPS is more, I don't know the word moody. It's harder to find a consistent good board with EPS. I'd say PU, you can maintain, if you're going to get 20 boards, probably the majority of those are going to feel the same. Whereas if you get 20 EPS, all of them aren't going to feel exactly the same. They have a lot of characteristics within the board. But this board, Kelly, I always loved it when he wrote epoxies, and he really, I do have to say, over time, and he's stepped out of the box. He's written a lot of different stuff in heats, which is a big factor of confidence. Like, you watch it and you think about guys who have iconically ridden different boards over time, and that puts you in a whole nother realm. I'd say watching Tom Curran videos, like he's totally okay with longer, shorter, whatever. Reynolds, you got to think back on that MTF heat in France and the dumpster dive. I mean, we're watching Lowers. The dumpster diver year was beyond game changing. I don't know what year that was.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because he ended up losing to Mick in the final.
Yeah.
But he was, I'm with you. Like, I love it when I see the world's best, like, ride something a little different. Like Kelly rode the wizard sleeve out at Gold Coast that year. It looked awesome. Here's Joel Parkinson. We're not going to get to hear what he's saying. What are your thoughts on Joel, like, as a surfer, and where does he rank for you in the broader pantheon of, like, Australians?
I think, that guard, the 3 degrees guard, was just, there's just no getting around the fact that the three of those guys, Dean Morrison, Mick Fanning, and Joel Parkinson, were so fun to watch. Parko, of course, it's like Dr. Smooth. And you would always look forward to certain locations, J-Bay, obviously, Bells, of course, the Gold Coast, of course, and Lowers. Lowers was always a spot.
Who was your favorite if you had to pick one of the Cooley kids?
I'm not afraid. It's like I love them all, so I'm not talking any sort of smack here, but Mick Fanning is just like white lightning, just the way that he is, both on his forehand and his backhand. And it's gnarly.
When I was coming up, when I was younger, anyway, coming up, didn't end up anywhere. When I was younger, Dean Morrison, like with the Volcom sticker and like the sun bleached hair, and like he was kind of the early JS rider. I remember getting like Australian magazines over in the US and being like, who is this dude? He surfs so well. And then I think he was in one of the early Jack Johnson films and like had a few waves kind of. I remember it was Shelter maybe or something like that. And I was like, man, this guy shreds. Like, who is he? And then you find out who he is. And I always really liked watching Dingo, but I'm the same. And even before I got to kind of know them professionally and personally, like they were just such culture shifting surfers.
Yeah. And I wonder if the three of them together really made that impact. I mean, individually, you could argue that they would all have changed a game, but the fact that they came from the same area, same age, and they surfed together, they hung together. It was like when they came down to Lowers in the morning and surfed, it was radical. It was because we were the Groms growing up that would surf the contest site before the contest, So we saw, as you were walking down in the dark, Nathan Hedge was fully suited up, riding a bicycle out of there. And that only led to the legend of Hedgie, where you knew he was the guy out there first in the water. And Mick Fanning, Dean Morrison, Parko, Davo, like Darren O'Rafferty, Mick Campbell, of course, Mick Campbell,
those
like
guys,
the Ginger Ninja.
Sure. Ginger Ninja.
Oh, here we go, Kelly.
Bam. Oh. He likes to stay busy. Like I think that last wave came in at an 8, and he likes to keep his foot on the gas when he's in the lead.
I wonder what do I do? And I actually completely forgot.
Well, you've got priority, I think, right? Do you like having priority, or is you're just like, oh man, I wish I didn't have it because I just be catching a lot of waves?
It depends. Like I would say everywhere but Lowers, I don't like having it, but at Lowers, I do enjoy it. I think I know what I'm actually looking for at Lowers.
And I guess, as you say before, sometimes there's like different swells where it's like there's a lot of waves. Like I'd rather maybe not have it and just stay busy. But then, as you said before, like there are some swells where it's like, which waves are going to give you potential 9s. So you're like, I don't want to not get a crack at one of those, especially if he's got those summer lulls happening.
That's the chess factor of Lowers that is so fun. You're out there, there could potentially be a better wave out the back, and you're going to let Kelly Slater go on the first one of a set. It's like, how do you do that? How do you let the greatest surfer of all time have a perfectly peeling right-hander because you know he's going to deliver, and then have the confidence to sit out the back and hope for the wave that you're looking for. So that was always kind of a fun little chess aspect of it. I'd say for me, the biggest actually event of learning at Lowers was the one I didn't do, which was the one I helped Dimity Stoyle. She reached out to me to see if I'd help her with some lineups. And I was like, absolutely, I would love to. So we went, we surfed together, we broke it down. And then I would ride my bike down and watch every one of her heats and be in the booth or whatever and help her kind of get a game plan going. And it was light, but it was a little bit of guidance. And she got third that year. And I think it was definitely, I want to say, one of her better results. And I noticed myself then creating a game plan. It's almost like when you know how to do something, you have to learn how to verbalize it to somebody else to actually understand what you know.
Yeah, you're wearing a different hat, right? So you're looking at it from a different perspective. And yeah, I can imagine that's hugely helpful. Wow, Stephen Bell. This was when he was still coaching Kelly after the Quicksilver split, but I think everyone was like, well, he's still coaching him. I've always wondered about like Belly, and I love him. I understand his value there, but like surf coaches, like, have you ever worked with one? I was wondering, like, what does a surf coach tell the best surfer in the world to do? Like, go out there and shred.
Dude, I think, honestly, it's almost like sometimes I would imagine Kelly's just got to talk some things out and be in there so that you can put something onto the plate. And, you know, having somebody that you trust enough. Belly has been to all these locations for a really long time.
Here you go. You're up.
So he would know good waves and bad waves. That, Dave, did I just fall on my first turn right there? Like, Gabby's like, I would have torn the...
Well, so, and this was the year, so Kelly was in second coming into Trestles, and he and Gabby just had that mental 2014 final at Chopes, and Gabby was in the front of the rankings. So yeah, he always...
Wait a second, so Gabby's number one right here?
Yeah, he is, yeah. Because I think he took it in Tahiti and he never lost it. But he's so young there, right? He's 20, it's KP, Snake maybe.
Look at Charlie's glasses. My goodness, dude, the yellow. That's before the yellow jersey, is it?
I think this might have been the first year. I think he is running it at this stop. But he even before he won his titles, he always kind of carried himself with like that kind of confidence, you know, like you can kind of tell
Gabby?
Early on. I mean, the guy won 2 out of his first 5 CT events when he got on in 2011 at the mid-year point, right? Oh, yeah. Todd and Ace.
Oh my God, how good's Ace bucking? Should I just I'll answer as if I'm Ace right here. Todd's
that means I got to be Todd Klein. We're both goofy footers, and I'm big in Japan, Ace, and you're big everywhere else. What do you think of that?
Oh, Todd. Well, yeah. Good. Well,
it's crazy that he's no longer with Hurley. Did that surprise you?
Ace is no longer with Hurley.
No, he was one of the guys at the end of last year that they parted ways, and he was like one of their first guys.
You know, that's kind of the surfing is just in a really interesting spot right now. There's just a lot of different things happening, I'd say. Hurley, that massacre week of who's on, who's off, why is it happening, was rattling to watch that. Yeah.
And he's so good. Like, he's so good pretty much everywhere. Like, he can win in beach breaks. He's so good at chopes. He's one of those guys too. Like, I think Ace and I are about the same age. I'm about to turn 37. And I admire like the way he's committed to like his fitness and his flexibility. And it seems like he's only gotten like stronger and better. And I'm like, okay, it's not over, Dave. Like, next week you could surf better than ever if you wanted.
Start looking at Kelly. But I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Ace got one of his highest results at the Wave Ranch this last year, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that wave in particular, like guys of like a very high like technical aptitude, like Ace, like or Kanoa, like guys like that surf it, and girls surf it so well because it's just one of those ones you kind of have to have your technique down and be ready to rip.
Totally, and have good form.
Oh, I got a replay here because we missed it in real time here.
Oh, Wilco on a sweet little honeysuckle, right? Yeah, Wilco's backhand is just, there's so much swing. He gets so much like rotation out of everything.
He's got a wide stance too. It's funny because in that 2002 boost event, like Luke wins, and Luke's kind of got a narrow stance, like his knees are pretty close together. Oh man, it's got him on rotation. You took the left, right?
Dude, this is a crazy heat. If I'm coming out on top of this, like, what did I do?
Stay tuned for the thrilling conclusion.
Dude, what happens next? Here.
Oh, dude, you hammered that thing. What's that board you're riding?
There's a funny story on that. That is an off the grid.
Daner.
Look at Dane Thomas did.
Lineup podcast alumni.
Wow. He is in the alum, isn't he? That's so fun. But yeah, that board was a rockered out. It's off a cheese stick. We cut off like 3 inches on both sides and then put a K-whip tail on it. And we were calling it the Shadowfax because that's Gandalf's horse in Middle-earth. And every time I ever did well at lowers, I was on one of those boards over the course of like 3 or 4 years. I would just reorder them.
Wow.
Are you kidding me, dude?
Well, and so explain that to me and everyone else. Like, so if that board's the magic board, like how come the Shadowfax doesn't become like a consumer facing model from CI?
Well, I think it is cool at time. Of course I wish it did. That was also the board that I got the third in the CT. I don't know what year that was, a couple years after this, and all those QS events. So over time, I started to think like this is a very good lowers board. However, that's the cool thing about Channel Islands is it's sort of a round table of everybody's decision making. And so if a model comes on and the team's like, hey, I'm not getting good boards off this, or I am, things can change. Like the T-Low on the opposite side of that, I rode and then Reynolds grabbed it and he made the final in France on it, or got third. And that was like a humongous green light to the T-Low coming as a model.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. What board do you think Kelly's riding in this event?
I think it's a Fred Rebel round pin. I know he was all over those.
Yeah.
But what's your favorite Kelly board?
I mean, I still have a wizard sleeve that I love. Like
really? Like when would you ride the wizard sleeve?
Everywhere. I would ride it like as a quad at like overhead restaurants, and then I will ride it like in like little crappy whatever. Like I one board to rule them all, like, and that's the thing. Like I remember Midget Smith shaped me like an EPS board in like, I don't know, 06, 07. And I was like, that's it for me. I'm stronger, lighter. I don't get 20 boards a year. So I'll just take these ones and like these quiver killers where I'm like, can I just take one board somewhere? Because when you work on tour, if the waves are good, you're probably working. Like you guys are out competing. And so we often just kind of like surf whatever. And the scraps are awesome. Like we get really good scraps, but you can get by with kind of, just a shorty that's like a real versatile shorty, or even like a groveler fun guy.
That's what I've noticed a big thing coming off tour and transitioning away from contests is when you're doing contests, let's just use the guys on tour, or let's just use Patrick as an example right now. So Pat's still doing the QS. He's really refining, tuning in on his fevers. He has a Fred whip that he loves in small waves. So he has to, because at that level, you can't really sacrifice like riding other stuff if you're missing the chance to get your, Willy Wonka golden ticket off the QS to the CT. And you would almost be raking yourself over the coals if you did. But once you step away from it, you realize that you can ride a lot of different boards in a lot of different waves. And it just allows the freedom of expression. I think like Dane was kind of tapping in on your guys' podcast, which is like, you just want to do things differently than you have because you want to reconnect with that natural freedom that surfing gave you.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things too. It's like, I mean, not every heat has the best waves on tour, but like they're all like really high quality waves. So sometimes riding that equipment doesn't necessarily translate to like surfing your local beach break. You're like, that's just, I got that board, but like, I can't do that. So
yeah, you almost are afraid to pull the board out. You almost sometimes get a little
yeah,
scared of that.
And it's like maybe your home break gets like world class, like 10% of the year. But if you're riding that other board, the other 90%, maybe the comfort you have and the familiarity you have with that, or that 90% board, you're better off just at that in those 10% conditions. Oh, Ian Folk, he's like a Gudauskas adjacent brother.
Look at to the right of him is Adur Letamendia from Pukas. He was staying with us during this event. It was always really fun when the event would come to town. people would just want to, they'd reach out, and we had a lot of people staying at our house during it, and everybody would just come down. And I want to say Patrick ended up beating Kelly the year after this, I think, man on man. And that was huge because we were down there watching that thing, and then had a huge support crew. And it felt like it kind of goes back to your local wildcard conversation, where it brings its own entourage of people who are connecting with the event. And Stu Kennedy on the Gold Coast would be a great example. Adam Robertson at Bell's, phenomenal example. I mean, you really can understand that the community wants to see the people in it do well when they're showing up on the beach and supporting it. It's always fun watching it on the webcast, like seeing who was down there.
Yeah. So you guys need scores right now. You got 8 minutes left. What's going through your brain?
Honestly, like, could you imagine? I'm almost probably at this point thinking Slater's got this thing in the bag. He's got 15 total.
You're relaxed. You're like, I'll get another crack at it in round 2.
Yeah, like, all right, cool. Stoked about round 2, right, guys?
What about the horror stories about Kelly's like mind games in the lineup? Did he talk to you, or do you talk to him?
I actually, and again, that's the best thing about those mind games, is that you'll never know if they're true or not. But I was saying that I surfed against Kelly on tour made me think about that exact moment where I was in Brazil. And when I was on tour at that time, it was just Patrick and I. We didn't really have a coach, so we would just travel to the events by ourselves and get psyched up for the heats and just kind of like, where are we at? What are we doing? And so Pat's like, just run down early, because you don't want to, like, Kelly's going to try to do some trippy mind games. Get out of here. And you just go down there, get in your zone. So I literally run like a half a mile down from the contest site where there's nobody on the beach. And I'm like, cool. But then I start doing that thing of, where's Kelly at? So I'm looking back at the contest and I don't even see him. I hear all this huge frenzy of people like screaming. And there's like somehow bongo drums in my memories. And then Kelly
war drums, the drums of war.
He runs the entire beach to me. So everybody's following him. And so I'm looking at it coming at me. I'm like, are you gotta be kidding me? And he comes over to give me a high five and he's like, hey, good luck. Have fun. Let's have some fun out there. And I was just going like, dude, I'm scrambled. Like, what? I just fully got mind gamed.
Yeah, big Tyrannosaur coming at you.
He was a Goliath. Those guys are, funny. I mean, I was really fortunate to I had Bede, Andy, Kelly, I wonder who else, Freddie for sure. And they were titans of it, man. Like, I think the older guys on tour, they become so entrenched in what that life is. And they really actually, they were larger than life to me, because I was a stoked surf grom coming up and then having to kind of battle going against your heroes. It's a cool moment in time. I'm sure kids now are doing that with the guys, but it seems like the top guys are younger. Like, it's almost like a new guard.
Yeah, like you could be a rookie, but facing a world champ that's like a few years younger than you these days.
How old is Italo?
25. Oh, you're up, dude.
Is this how I do it right here?
You've run out of time. You better get moving if it's not here. That looks sick. Oh, man. Gem.
Dude. Get the vert salad out.
Dude, you're pretty good at surfing.
Wow. So those rights are good. They go for a long time.
That was the problem. That must be your wave.
I can't, like, Kelly's, I feel every time Pat and I were in the event, we somehow had Kelly or
you're fired up. Look at the paddle. You can back out there.
I mean, I'm going against Kelly Slater, dude. Have you ever seen Black and White? Like, come on.
Yeah, walk us through the replay.
All right. I will say that this was something, and this came in against Wilco a couple years later in an event, is if it's weird and windy down the line, don't overcook your first turns. Like that was, I set the first one up so that I could get big on that second one. That's always a big thing, because you want to come out of the gates heavy, but sometimes lowers sets up a little further down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think the timing on that one, provided you so much opportunity, and that's probably that local knowledge, right? That board looks so good. Bam.
It just fits the pocket so well. No, I mean, really, on the back end there, it really is about getting a good flow. I mean, I watched the way that Medina does it or did it when those events were still on, and he is just so fun to watch, because not only does he go vertical, I always felt like going against guys like him, I just didn't have that extra gear of Medina could throw a shove it. He could throw like that nose pick, and competitively, I always stuck to the fundamentals, which probably was like an ace bucking program where, you might, if you stick it on a couple eights, majority of the time you might make that heat. But we definitely had a lot of fun out there. That's for sure. Here we go. Yellow jersey.
Oh, yellow
glasses.
jersey. There it is. To go with the glasses.
I knew it.
Lethal. Run the swallowtail too. Big fan. Who's that? Carlos
Munoz.
All right.
Yeah, this is fun, Dave. Thanks for getting me in tuned on this. This is kind of lifting up my COVID-19.
Your quarantine spirits. This is great. The Rearview rules.
So what do you think I got on that wave? I need an 8.3.
8.5.
So I got it on that wave? I don't know if I got it, dude. Do I?
What did you get another? You won the heat. You didn't get another one here in the last 3 minutes.
It might be. Oh, no, I got it. Okay.
Oh, it doesn't say what score it is. 14.93. Would have been around 8.5 then.
That's cool.
8.4. Here goes Kelly. Inside right.
Dude.
No whammy. He doesn't need much though, right? He needs like a mid score. So he probably, you don't want that.
I love Kelly. He always, he would do random stuff out there too. Remember that year he got the barrel? It was somehow like a legitimate barrel.
Yeah. Now I remember Bruce got a barrel one year too, and it scored so high, but it was like a real shitty head dip, and you're just like, what the fuck? 14.93. All right, so what are you thinking? You've got 2 minutes. You've got the lead. Poor Daner. He's stressed.
Thinking, more importantly, oh my, it's way more.
He's looking for distractions. He's like, what? Anything, but these last 2 minutes.
He's totally looking up at uppers, going like, "Is that a set?"
So are you stressing? You like, oh, who's this guy?
Oh, wait a second. Calling in the marshal.
Is that the marshal?
This is what you're going to see today at Lowers. That's the guy.
I just telling you to get out.
Oh,
Coco.
what? No.
There's a flock of them.
Party.
Posse. That's pretty fun.
I was probably at this point, Dave, thinking that the next set's going to be pretty waked out after 15 jets. Just flew past it.
You're stoked. You're waving back. Oh, here goes. Shark on the inside.
Definitely still stressing if Kelly's standing up.
Oh, he needs a 7. He needs something huge.
Well, here we go. First step. Oh.
I don't know if he would have got around that section. I don't know if poor Dane.
Poor Dane, dude. He's losing years on his life. Did you see that?
He's just losing years of his life on this heat.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'll tell you that last minute when you're in a situation like that is the longest time has ever felt. I mean, this is round 1, but
sure.
You got to think about some of the guys who've sat through some finals and things have worked out, and it's time really is a relative thing when you surf heats, because sometimes you snap your fingers and it's gone, and other times you literally remember every literal second of it.
Was there, I mean, we talked about you didn't get your opportunity out there when you were a rookie, and was winning round 1 against not only Wilco but Kelly. Like, was there a bit of a weight that was lifted for you? Like, did you feel validated? Like, I am as good as these guys. This feels great. Like, did it feel better than other heat wins? I guess is my question.
I don't know. Like, I definitely don't remember. I don't remember how I felt here. I definitely remember the third at Lowers, which I believe, again, I don't know the exact year, but that to me was the validation of like, wow, I can. I think it probably was a brotherly thing, but at that time, Pat had been on tour since I fell off and hadn't gotten a semi. And then as a wild card, I was able to get the semi, and that goes back to that brother rivalry, which was literally the only reason I was still competing at that time, was to just still be able to do it with Pat. So it was cool. Like, it came back into the house, and then that pushed Pat to get the third at Bell's, I'm sure. And obviously Pat still got more oomph in the tank. So.
Did Kelly say anything to you after this heat? Did you feel fist bump or anything?
Kelly is awesome, man. Like, I really, like, as much as people go like, Kelly does the mind games and stuff, but he's been so cool to Patrick, Dane, and I. He's always come down to the Stokeramas. I think we had a Stokerama this year during the event, and he still took the time to come down. Like, after that whole heat. So, which again, I think he smoked me in round 3. Right?
Yeah, well, I was about to say, so you win round 1, you get to go straight to round 3, and it was at that time when the format was like, You're probably going to run into the same people time and time again, hence the Fred Patacia thing from 2010.
Yeah.
And you lost to Kelly in round 3, and I mean, I guess it happens, right?
Well, it not even just happens. It's like in a situation like that, as a wild card or somebody coming up, you have nothing to lose. So you go out there, you try your hardest, and if it actually doesn't work out, it's just a rad experience. I remember kicking out of all of these CT heats, just actually thankful, because you don't, a lot of times on the WQS, you lose heats, and there's a couple factors that are frustrating where it's bad conditions, just a crazy call that can go down, or nobody sees it. And so you're kind of like on the CT, you don't have it as much because people are watching, so they're connected to it. The guys you're surfing against are your heroes. The waves are going to be good because the calls are that way. And so it is truly like a treat.
So who are the best surfers out at Lower Trestles today, and why do you think they are?
I've actually was just talking to Dane about this, and I think Cole Houshman, to me, is coming up. He's going to make a huge impact. He's massive, good style. He's a goofy foot. He has all the tricks and power. Chloe and Dino is the kingpin, I'd say, and Griffin. Like, those guys are sharing a lot of it. And then Crosby and Jet and Cade just under them. And there's a whole slew of kids. Like, there's got to be a 30 to 40 kid pack out there. If you get younger than that, you got to go into like Tyrone Fomenko. And then if you really, really want to get young, then John Walla's kids, Eden and Zion, are next level. I don't know. I think Zion's like 8.
And one of the rad things that you and your brothers do are the Stokerama events. They're both for boys and girls, they're for everybody. And I do think that there's there's totally connective tissue between stuff like that and then the development pathway for young surfers. And we're seeing a lot of young women come up and surf really, really well. Who are some of the ones that have stood out for you lately in San Clemente?
Well, I mean, that's super true. Samantha Sibley is making a huge impact. Kira Pinkerton making a huge impact. There is a massive group of girls in general, I would say globally, at that age. I think it comes down to surfing being fun, more girls doing it. There's packs of them. And it is true that Stokerama is really, it's given us the ability to stay connected to the younger kids and kind of be there to let them know that even if they're competing, it is fun. It's more than a contest. It's like you make friends that way. And yeah, I think, wow. I mean, Samantha Sibley though is
she's legit.
She's legit, right? Like that. I was just watching some footage of her. I'm trying to think, like Mighty Mouse, we call her, but her name's Mia. Remy Todd. These are really young girls, but they're so fun and have a great time.
So in addition to the Positive Vibe Warriors Foundation that you're working on with Stokerama, you're living in Oceanside, you're one of Vans's super surfers. You retired from competition. Was it last year?
Yeah, the Triple Crown.
Triple Crown, that's right. You seem like, you're a massive creative too. Like, you're constantly working in like zine kind of format. You're doing the VH1 connoisseurship. Like, what are you into these days, and what kind of drives you agnostic of the pandemic, if we weren't doing that?
Agnostic of the pandemic. Yeah, let's get past pandemic. COVID-19 is gone.
Let's start thinking past the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, surfing is, I think for Pat, Dana, and I, always has been the ability to connect with as many people as we can. And I think even when we're competing, we're always still doing the art, always trying to make videos and, surf big waves, surf small waves, get barreled, do airs, and just kind of respect and be a part of all parts of it. So I felt a little awkward when I did, retire from competing, because that was at the time for sure just one bucket of what I was contributing. And I think a lot of people are like, dude, like, you're young. Like, why are you competing? Like, or why are you retiring?
Yeah.
And I just kind of had lost the passion in that realm to keep going for it. But it doesn't mean I'm not a super fan. I still watch all the heats. I was setting alarms to watch Pat in Australia, and I enjoy it and being around it. But I do, like, now it's put me into a really good space of just trying to be as creative as I can in as many places as I can, kind of every day trying to just get involved on making something, like literally sometimes just with my hands. Like, I do scrapbook. I've done one a day for as many days as I can. I've been live streaming in this time, all my VHSs out of my room, just because we're on lockdown, and trying to get people excited about, surfing and the surfers that I identified with when I was growing up. And it's funny because you realize like I'm just cold calling guys. Like the example today was I cold called Timmy Kern on a FaceTime, and then I texted Kalani Robb like 30 minutes before I went on and said, "Hey, would you be down?" He's like, "Dude, hit me for sure." And I think all of us just eventually realize no matter what you do within surfing, you just identify as a surfer and you're a part of that culture and family. So it's actually quite easy for us to connect. Like yesterday, I talked to Ozzy Wright, and I've been talking with Rob Machado, Kelly Slater, and it's just like they're down to help somebody out in the family to try to actually push what they did forward to the next generation is kind of what I'm trying to do. But yeah, the zines are super fun, photos, art, but it's basically surfing is just a way to artistically express yourself as well. So
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that especially right now, everyone's just like, oh, well, like, what am I going to do? And I think I'm a little bit older than you, but I think we also both came up around the same generational space where it's like, yeah, I'll watch the contest. I'll watch this video. It's all surfing to me. I get excited about it. And so for people that want to watch you streaming your VHS, Scrooge McDuck goldmine of surf videos, how do they do that? They find you on Instagram and then they're watching through Instagram. How's that work?
So what I did, and this is cool, the way that we had to do this today was a perfect example of you start with an idea and then, okay, now I have a timeline. How do I get this done? So I announced that I wanted to do that because I really wanted to. I was just watching those videos. So then I had to realize, okay, I got to go to Wix.com, make a website. Never done that. And then do the YouTube thing and learn how to live stream something, get an encoder. So basically, I have top level respect for the webcast at this moment because I understand exactly how hard it is to run. But it just proves nowadays you can do whatever you'd like to do. But if you want to tune in, which I would highly suggest, like guys are stoked to be a part of this. Mick Fanning's in, Shane Dorian's in, Rob Machado's in, like the heroes and the way that they connect. We actually learned yesterday that Magnaplasm's Bruce Irons section was actually edited to a Black Sabbath song. So we played it to both songs. And it's just like those fun little tidbits are so black belt surf nerdiness that I just love. So if you want to tune in, the whole thing is called the Paradise Awareness Outreach, which kind of basically is what it is. It's just saying, hey, Paradise, like, let's just still be aware that life is good. And the outreach part of it, I thought was just funny because it's a time, it's like we're all locked in our own homes, literally. So
I think it's perfect, man. I think it's so rad. So if no one's checked it out yet, definitely make that part of your quarantine routine. On that topic, we've got a segment called the Pandemic Survival Kit. So this is where we're going to come up with recommendations for what people could be eating or reading or watching in this time. So a couple things. What is one food that you found you're eating way more of than you imagined during the quarantine?
I'd say oatmeal.
Man, I was gonna say the same thing. I've got like steel cut oatmeal. I like oatmeal, but I just feel now I'm like every day. It's just part of my routine.
Every day, let's stay on
it.
You
can make it cheesy. You can make it sweet. You can do fruit. It's great.
Yeah, essentially, it's a canvas for you to paint on.
That's right. It's a bland canvas. All right. So for feeding your mind, what is one book recommendation that you give out to people?
Book I've read just recently.
Yeah.
Actually, I read a pretty interesting book called I believe it's called This Is Not About a T-Shirt, or This Is Not a T-Shirt, and that's the Hundreds. Do you know the Hundreds? It's like a streetwear. So he wrote a book. And it's really cool. And that was really inspiring, basically talking about how he started out of his house because he felt like there was a need in that space and place for street fashion and was just screen printing T-shirts, him and his friend. And he talks about the ups and downs and how to stay core. And there's a lot of really good takeaway on that. So I'd recommend it.
I've been reading, I restarted Meet Me in the Bathroom by Lizzie Goodman. I got this like a year and a half ago and I started it and I really liked it and then I lost it and then I didn't reorder it. And then since the pandemic, I reordered it and then I restarted, but I forgot where I'd left off. So I ended up like rereading like 100 pages, but it's essentially about the return of rock and roll culture to New York. in the early aughties with like the Strokes and Interpol. And it's really interesting. It's not, there's no like prose or narrative. It's all quotes. So it's like all these band members are quoted and all these like music people are quoted and like all these like journalists are quoted, and they're just telling this story, and it takes you through like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and LCD Sound System and the Killers, like all these people that kind of came through and brought the center of rock and roll back to New York. And I'm not like a big music guy, but like I like history. It's been pretty good.
Well, that's a good combo. I mean, you got to like some rock and too as well. It's nice to learn, feel a little bit more fortified in the knowledge of it.
For sure. Okay, so that was Feed Your Mind. So for Rest Your Mind, what is a TV show that you've been watching since the quarantine?
Oh, okay. This is a good one actually, because this is perfect. So my fiance and I, we watch TV every night, and it's basically, if it's me with a clicker, it's a documentary, some weird, like really anxiety ridden like thing that we're learning about. And if it's her, like it's something fun, uplifting, we'll get into cartoons or this new one is New Girl, literally, but it's Zooey Deschanel, and she lives in a house with like 3 guys, and it's been awesome because it is a little bit of a dark, uncertain time in our lives. And we were watching other shows, and we were having trouble. You know, we'd wake up in the middle of the night and just kind of be like, wow, like I'm feeling unsettled. And New Girl, it's just nice to kind of escape it a little bit and just laugh.
That totally makes sense. I got into Tiger King on Netflix. It's like a documentary. A lot of people have been talking about it. It must map to my profile because I've been getting pushed with it. And it's like a docu-series about like crazy, like big cat owners, like people that own like 200 like tigers at these like wild animal parks. And the main guy is named Joe Exotic, and he just looks bananas. And like people are like, you gotta watch it. It gets so crazy. I'm like, it looks crazy just from the artwork. Like you don't have to sell me. They're like, you have no idea. And so for anyone, I won't spoil it, but like I started watching the first episode and was basically like, all right, so I'm just gonna watch this for the next 10 hours or however long it is because I can't turn this off. It's crazy. That's
pretty scary with the binge factor. Like, oh, here's 3 seasons of this. You might like it. You're like, oh, what?
Yeah. So on the non-Shelby nights when you're not watching New Girl, you might start clicking over to Tiger King on Netflix.
Oh, heck yeah. I'll keep it. Thank you.
All right. And the last one for the pandemic survival kit is Feed Your Heart. What is a movie or film recommendation you have for people?
Okay. Well, I mean, surf movies. Feed it. Just keep looking at them. I promise you, they make you feel better about getting in the water at some point in your life after this is all done.
That's right. You're going to feel the froth. The froth tank's going to be overflowing by the time you get back in the water. I've got 6-year-old twins, and we got Onward, the Pixar movie, the other day, and it's really good, and it buckled me like at the end. I've not cried in a while, and I was just like had to leave the room because I was like, my kids are like, what's wrong? And I'm like, it's nothing, don't worry about it, but it's super good.
Keep the lights out.
that's right. Don't look at me. It was good.
How trippy are sometimes the cartoon movies have really strong themes in them.
Oh my God.
As a kid, you'd watch them, and of course, like your kids, you're like, oh, that was so fun. And then as an adult, you're watching it like, oh my gosh, they're bridging some real gaps here.
Oh yeah. No, that's a good one. I recommend it. Even if it doesn't make you cry, it's still entertaining. Cool. So that's the pandemic survival kit. We've got one more segment before we go. This is the lightning round. So we've got 10 questions. You're going to answer them as fast as you can.
You should make this the white lightning round. You should have it be presented by Mick Fanning. That would be that'd be cherry.
We should. I could get some like 21-inch length board shorts off him.
You should have like his Lemmy and Mart, like Lemmy.
That's right. Oh man. Okay. All right. So 10 questions. If you could only have one board set up for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad, bonzer, or finless, what do you choose?
Thruster.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, big time, every day.
Burrito or pizza?
Pizza.
Last book you read?
Well, that was good. We talked about that actually. This is
we did.
It's something about a t-shirt. This is not about
it's not about a t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
We'll make it up. If it's not written, we'll write it. Sounds good. Best surf film ever?
What? Don't even ask people that question in a lightning round. That's
Oh man, come on, man.
that's
You've been yeah. You can just say the best one you've released today.
okay.
How's
So
that?
I would say, yeah, today was Tim Curran Here and Now and What Now. But I would say if I had to have only 2 in my life, because I can get you close there, that would be Searching for Tom Curran, an documentary.
Good choices. One wave you never have to go back to.
Oh yeah, baby. Okay. I mean, I know a lot of people are gonna say like Brazilian QS spots, but I always had a good time. But maybe on the wrong tide. Maybe I won't go back there on the low tide when the wind's nuking onshore.
Sure. Only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life.
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh man, I don't know. Oh man, that's a really good question. Rocky Point.
Good
Random. Where did that come from? I don't know. Let's go with it.
that was like, where's the last time I had a good session? Best person to share a lineup with.
Oh, that's so fun. There's so many of those guys. I honestly really enjoy Dane and Pat. They're good blokes.
Worst person to share a lineup with.
Oh, the dark side.
That's right.
That's
Two
a guy
sides of
who
a coin, my friend.
he catches a lot of waves.
Who's that?
I don't really mind that if they're not the same waves I catch, but who would be a guy I don't know, man. Honestly, sometimes you rock up at those the CT events before the event. So we could say I would not like to surf in those times. Like, don't take me to snap a rock before the first day of the event's about to start.
Yep, that's fair. I've been there many times. All right, last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by
Having a beer.
Tanner Gudauskas. Thanks for joining us for the lineup, buddy.
How sick is it? Look at this is how we're gonna do it.
This is how we're going to do it.
This is the sign. I've just now approved that something's going in and I'm gonna put the top on this guy.
I like it. It's like, did you ever see the arm wrestling movie with Sylvester Stallone, Over the Top?
No.
Oh no, I'll give it. Don't worry about it. But he was like a truck driving arm wrestling competitor, and he's had this hat. And he's like, when I turn this hat around, that's when my engine turns on. And I was just thinking of you when you're like, when this comes on the top, that's when it's beer time.
That's when it's beer time.
So that's it. That's the lineup at Low Tides conversation with Tanner Gudauskas. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as well as the new segments. As Tanner mentioned, he's doing some really cool stuff on his new website, theparadiseawareness.outreach.com. We'll put a link to that in our show notes. We'll continue to have these conversations and release lineups every week. Please have a listen and let us know what you think. If you haven't already, please download, listen, rate, and subscribe to our podcast. We've gotten some really positive and kind reviews, and that really helps the podcast spread and lets us continue to do more. So if you have time to open up your podcast app, give us 5 stars or whatever you feel is fair, and leave a review. It would really help us out a lot. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of The Lineup at Low Tide. Hope you safely get some waves wherever you are, and we'll see you then.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there and then watch more videos over there. And then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.